The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. Nora Callahan adjusted her black uniform for the third time that evening, her hands trembling slightly, not from nerves about serving the city's elite, but from the familiar weight of hiding who she really was. At 21, Nora had perfected the art of invisibility, moving through the restaurant like a ghost with a rehearsed smile. She had been working at Salvetti's for 6 months now, grateful for a job that paid enough to cover her tuition at the local college where she studied linguistics and international relations. There is a reason she chose those particular subjects, and that reason was buried deep in a past she never spoke about. "Table 9 needs their wine refilled," called Heather, the head waitress, barely glancing up from her reservation book. "And try not to spill anything on Mr. Corsetti tonight. He's already complained twice about the temperature in here." Nora nodded, gathering a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than she made in a week. Marco Corsetti. Even his name carried weight in this city. She had been serving his table for 2 months now, and he had never once looked at her as anything more than a piece of the restaurant's carefully curated decor. That invisibility was exactly what she needed. The dining room hummed with the quiet conversations of people who never worried about rent, about medical bills, about whether there would be enough left over for groceries after buying textbooks. Nora knew that other world intimately. It was the world she had escaped from when she fled her small corner of Boston with nothing but a backpack and a secret that could get her killed. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was sharp and commanding, with just a hint of impatience that made Nora's spine straighten automatically. She turned to find Marco Corsetti standing closer than she had expected, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter in a way she immediately distrusted. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, with jet-black hair that looked like it had been styled by someone who charged more per hour than Nora made in a day. His suit was immaculate, definitely Italian, unmistakably expensive, and on anyone else might have seemed ostentatious. On him it looked like armor. "Your wine, sir," Nora said, softly, lifting the bottle slightly. She tried to ignore how the overhead lights caught the strong line of his jaw, the hint of stubble that suggested he had been too busy for a proper shave. "Not for me," Marco gestured toward the elegant woman sitting behind him. "My mother. She has been trying to get your attention for the past few minutes." Nora's gaze shifted to the woman, and her heart clenched in a way she had not expected. Mrs. Corsetti was probably in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a classic chignon, and kind eyes that seemed to hold a universe of stories. There is something most people never consider. Invisibility cuts in two directions. We hide ourselves from the world, but we also hide the world from ourselves. Nora had spent 2 years making herself unseen, and in doing so, she had trained herself to actually see others. Without thinking, Nora set the wine bottle on the nearest table and approached Mrs. Corsetti. "Good evening," she signed, her hands moving with practiced grace. "How may I help you?" The woman's face transformed with pure delight, her hands dancing in response. "Oh, how wonderful! I was hoping to compliment the chef on the risotto. It reminds me of what my grandmother used to make in Naples years ago." "I will make sure he receives your kind words," Nora signed back, genuinely smiling for the first time all evening. "Would you like me to ask him about the preparation?" "I believe he uses a special saffron blend from Sicily," the older woman replied, and her hands shaped the words with the kind of expressive joy that only someone who had spent a lifetime communicating without sound could manage. "You are very kind," the older woman signed. "Most people just smile and nod when they realize I am deaf. Your signing is beautiful. Where did you learn?" "I grew up with a deaf cousin," Nora answered automatically, and then froze. She had been so careful. She had changed her hair color, her name, even the way she walked and dressed. She had constructed an entirely new person from the ground up. And in one unguarded moment of human connection, a piece of the old self had slipped through. Behavioral leakage. The psychologists were right. A deaf cousin? Marco's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He was staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You are full of surprises, aren't you, Nora Callahan?" Nora felt the familiar panic rising in her chest. "I should get back to work," she said quietly, reaching for the wine bottle. Her hand was trembling visibly now, and she silently cursed her inability to maintain composure. "Wait." Marco caught her wrist, not roughly but firmly enough to stop her movement. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system, and she saw something flicker in his eyes that suggested he had felt it too. "I am sorry," he said, his voice gentler now. "That was unnecessarily harsh. My mother does not connect with many people. Your kindness means more than you know." Nora's first instinct was to pull away, but something in Marco's expression stopped her. A flicker of vulnerability beneath the power and confidence, something she recognized because she carried it herself. "Your mother is lovely," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "She was telling me about her childhood in Naples." 3 days later, Nora found herself unable to stop thinking about the interaction with the Corsettis. She had expected to be fired for drawing attention to herself, but instead, Heather had handed her an envelope containing a generous tip and a handwritten note. "Thank you for seeing my mother. M.C." The Tuesday evening crowd at Salvetti's was thinner than usual, allowing Nora to catch her breath between tables. She was refilling water glasses when she felt it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, raising goosebumps along her spine. There's a neurological reason for that feeling. Your brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, processes visual attention from others even before your conscious mind registers it. It's an ancient survival mechanism, and it was firing now. Marco sat alone at his usual table, his dark eyes tracking her movements across the restaurant. Unlike his usual dining companions, serious men in expensive suits who spoke in hushed tones, tonight he was alone, almost as if he was waiting for something or someone. "Mr. Corsetti would like to speak to you when you have a moment," the restaurant manager whispered to Nora as he passed, his tone making it clear this was not a request. "And Nora, be careful. That family is not known for their forgiving nature." With trembling hands, Nora approached the table, notepad clutched like a shield. "Good evening, Mr. Corsetti. How may I help you?" "Sit down, Nora," Marco said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. His tone was polite, but left no room for refusal. The restaurant seemed to fade away as Nora sank into the chair, her carefully constructed world beginning to crack. "I do not know what you mean," she managed, though the lie felt hollow even to her own ears. "Your accent slips sometimes," Marco said, swirling the red wine in his glass with the calm of a man who held all the cards and knew it. "Boston, I think. And you flinch when certain names are mentioned, names like Reardon or Brennan, Irish families with connections to my competitors." Fear coursed through Nora's veins, icy and paralyzing. How had he noticed these things? She had been so careful. "I'm just a waitress trying to get through college." A waitress who speaks fluent Italian Sign Language, a rare dialect even among professional interpreters. Marco leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur. "A waitress who tenses every time my associate Bianchi walks through the door, as if you recognize him, as if you are afraid of him." "You have been watching me," Nora accused, finding an unexpected courage in her fear. The realization should have terrified her more, but instead she felt a strange relief. The exhaustion of maintaining a facade, giving way to something almost like surrender. This is another thing the psychology of secrets teaches us. Carrying a hidden identity is metabolically expensive. The body wants to be known. I watch everyone, Marco replied, with a slight shrug that did nothing to diminish his intensity. It is how I have stayed alive this long. But you, Nora Callahan, or should I call you by your real name, you are different. A chill ran through her body as she realized the depth of her miscalculation. She had chosen this restaurant because it was far from Irish territory, never imagining she would end up serving one of the most powerful figures in the Italian syndicate. My mother thinks you are an angel, Marco continued, surprising Nora with the sudden gentleness in his tone. She has not stopped talking about you since that night. She says you have kind eyes, despite the fear you carry. Nora's fingers twisted nervously in her lap, the weight of her secret suddenly unbearable. Your mother is perceptive, but she does not know who I am, who my family is. If she did, she would not be so welcoming. She knows more than you think, Marco said cryptically, his dark eyes studying her with uncomfortable intensity. The question is, what are you doing here, serving tables at a restaurant frequented by your family's sworn enemies? Outside the restaurant window, rain began to fall, streaking the glass and blurring the city lights into watercolor smudges. It matched Nora's blurring reality, the clear lines between safety and danger washing away with every word exchanged. I am not what you think, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. I left that life. I am not part of my family's business. I never was. Marco's response was surprisingly gentle, almost sad. No one ever truly leaves, Nora, especially not the daughter of Connor Callahan, whose hatred for my family spans generations. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. He knew. Of course he knew. My father disowned me 2 years ago when I refused to marry into the Sullivan family to cement their alliance. As far as he is concerned, I no longer exist. Recognition flickered in Marco's eyes, followed by something that might have been respect. So you chose exile over being a pawn in their game. Brave. Foolish, but brave. Not brave enough, Nora countered, thinking of the night she had fled, taking nothing but a backpack and the guilt of abandoning her younger siblings. A muscle twitched in Marco's jaw, the only indication that her words had affected him. Your youngest brother, Finn, he is safe. My people have been keeping an eye on him at college in Vermont. Nora's head snapped up, shock and confusion worn on her face. You have been watching Finn. Why would you? Her question died as understanding dawned, cold and terrifying. You have been using him to find me. Initially, yes, Marco admitted without apology. But something changed 3 months ago. Your father's right-hand man, Declan Shaughnessy, made a move against the boy. We intervened. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Nora struggled to process what Marco was telling her, the implications sending her mind spinning in dangerous directions. Declan would not. He has been loyal to my father for decades. Loyalty changes when power shifts, Marco said, his eyes never leaving her face. There's been talk that your father is losing his grip, that Shaughnessy has been making deals with the Russians behind his back. Outside, a black SUV pulled up to the curb, its windows tinted against prying eyes. Marco glanced at it briefly before returning his attention to Nora. Your family is imploding, and the fallout is going to be catastrophic for everyone involved. Nora felt sick, her carefully constructed new life crumbling around her. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me, Marco? Because my mother likes you, he said with a wry smile that did not quite reach his eyes, and because I need someone who knows Shaughnessy's habits, his hiding places, his weaknesses, someone who grew up watching him operate. The implication hung between them, absurd and impossible. You want me to help you take down my father's organization? I left that world. I don't know anything about their current operations. Marco reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers in a touch that felt both threatening and oddly reassuring. What I want is to prevent a war that will leave dozens of bodies in its wake, including your siblings. Nora pulled her hand away, fighting the unexpected electricity of his touch. You expect me to believe you care about preventing bloodshed? Your reputation suggests otherwise. Reputations are useful tools, Marco said, his voice hardening, but they rarely tell the full story. My father built his empire on violence. I've spent 5 years dismantling the most brutal aspects of his legacy. He paused. That's the part no one outside these walls knows. This is worth pausing on. In every community, in every organization, there are people working quietly to reform what they were handed, not loudly, not for recognition, but because they can't live with the alternative. Marco Corsetti was one of those people. You want me to believe you're the good guy in all this? Nora asked, disbelief evident in her voice. There are no good guys in this story, Nora. Just people trying to survive and maybe protect the ones they care about along the way. He checked his watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than her tuition. We don't have much time. Shaughnessy's men have been watching this restaurant for the past 20 minutes. That black sedan across the street? He spoke without turning to look, his posture relaxed despite the danger he described. Nora's blood turned to ice as she discreetly glanced toward the window. The sedan was positioned perfectly to monitor the restaurant's entrance. How did they find me?
A waitress approached their table with nervous energy, placing a dessert menu between them as cover. There is a man at the bar asking questions about you, she whispered to Nora. Showed your picture to the bartender, Irish accent, scar above his right eye. Cormac, Nora breathed the name silently, recognizing the description of her father's most ruthless enforcer, the man who had broken her cousin's hand for skimming from collection money, who handled problems that needed to disappear permanently. Marco's expression remained unchanged, but Nora noticed the subtle shift in his posture, coiled tension ready to spring. There is a service corridor through the kitchen that connects to the building next door. The staff use it for smoke breaks. Nora's academic life flashed before her eyes. The linguistics scholarship she had worked so hard for, the apartment she shared with a roommate who knew nothing of her past, the normal existence she had carved out through sheer determination and anonymity. How did you find me the same way they did? Asked Nora suddenly. By following the thread of your unusual talents, Marco said, his voice matter-of-fact. How many people can speak that specific dialect of Italian Sign Language? Your kindness to my mother painted a target on your back. He slid a cell phone across the table, sleek and obviously untraceable. Take this. My driver will meet you at the back entrance in 5 minutes. He will take you somewhere safe while we figure this out. Panic flared in Nora's chest. My roommate, my classes. I cannot just disappear. People will notice. Your roommate will be told you had a family emergency. Your professors will receive emails asking for extensions. Marco's efficiency was both reassuring and terrifying. But if you walk out the front door, Shaughnessy's men will make you disappear permanently. Nora stared at the phone, the reality of her situation crashing down around her. This was not a negotiation. It was her only chance at survival. Why would you risk helping me? I am nothing to you. Worse, I am a Callahan. Because I have spent 2 months watching you study until dawn, donate half your tips to a homeless shelter, and treat my mother with more dignity than most of my associates show each other. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. You deserve better than being collateral damage in Shaughnessy's power grab. Before she could respond, Marco's phone vibrated with a text. His expression darkened as he read it. They are making a move. Go now. Through the kitchen, down the hall, last door on the left. Carlo is waiting with a black SUV. Nora rose on shaky legs, clutching the phone like a lifeline. What about you? They'll recognize you leaving. Let me worry about myself. Marco said, his smile shifting into something predatory, a reminder of exactly who he was beneath the expensive suit and cultured manners. I've dealt with worse than Cormac's thugs. 3 weeks later, Nora stood at the window of a lakeside safe house, watching dawn break over the water. The cabin belonged to Marco's family, a peaceful retreat where generations of Corsettis had escaped the pressures of city life and family business. Mrs. Corsetti sat at the rustic dining table, her elegant hand signing rapidly as she told Nora stories of Marco as a child. Stubborn, fiercely protective, always with a strong sense of justice that his father tried to beat out of him. Think about what that means. A child raised in an environment designed to manufacture cruelty, somehow holding on to a moral core that refused to be extinguished. Psychologists who study resilience call this a redemptive narrative, the ability to take a damaging past and reframe it as the origin of strength rather than the definition of character. Marco Corsetti had built one of those narratives, quietly, alone, inside a world that punished softness. He was different from the beginning, Mrs. Corsetti signed, her expressions as eloquent as her hands. My husband wanted him to be cruel, but Dante found ways to show mercy without appearing weak. It is a difficult balance in our world. The burner phone Nora had been given vibrated against the windowsill, displaying a simple message. It is time. Be ready in 10. Nora's stomach clenched with a mixture of fear and anticipation as she showed the message to Mrs. Corsetti. He will protect you, the older woman signed, her eyes gentle but knowing. My son sees in you what I see, a kindred spirit trying to escape a legacy you never chose. The sound of tires on gravel announced Marco's arrival. He entered alone, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, a cut above his eyebrow, bruised knuckles, but his eyes were alive with the particular grim satisfaction of someone who had just come through a fight they were always going to win. We found the evidence, he said without preamble, setting a laptop on the table. Financial records, communications with the Russians, orders for hits on your brothers. Shaughnessy has been systematically dismantling your father's organization from within. Nora stared at the screen, nausea rising as she scrolled through communications that detailed the calculated betrayal. My father trusted him completely. They grew up together, shared everything. How could Declan do this? A particular message caught Nora's eye, a conversation between Shaughnessy and an unknown contact about the girl who got away. Her throat tightened as she realized they were discussing her, planning to use her as leverage against her father if he discovered their betrayal. He sent men to my university, she whispered, pointing to timestamps from 2 months ago. They were in my literature class, my favorite coffee shop. They were everywhere, watching, waiting for the right moment. Marco's hand rested on Nora's shoulder, steady and warm against her trembling body. But they didn't get to you, and now we're 10 steps ahead of whatever they planned. Mrs. Corsetti approached with 3 cups of tea, her movements graceful despite her age. She signed to Nora, My son rarely brings anyone to this place. It has been our sanctuary since he was a boy, the only place his father never tainted with violence. Power corrupts even the strongest loyalties, Marco said, his voice devoid of judgment, but carrying the weight of someone who had watched it happen firsthand. But we have a more immediate problem. Shaughnessy knows we have this evidence, and he has called for a sit-down with your father tonight.